Okay, Tony, over to you.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Tony Marcolini. I'm joined here today by my co-host, Martin Mongello and John Hartman. And today we have two very special guests joining us to chat. Boxer turned actor John Duddy and the great director and writer Colin Broderick. So let's go. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm very excited to be able to chat today with John Duddy and Colin Broderick. They're here more so to talk about their new movie, A Bend in the River. But we're going to sneak in some other questions first before we get to the main event, because we all have a number of questions for the projects you've done leading up to today. John, I think I'm going to start with you, only because I know you.
Okie dokie.
So for most people, I'm sure, recognize your name and your face from your years of boxing. When you were first transitioning into acting from the boxing arena, you did a video with Bon Jovi for one of his songs. What was that like, recording that?
It was hilarious. That's what it was. I say going from getting punched in the ring in Madison Square Garden to getting punched in front of a camera, they Bon Jovi with his whole band in the ring with you and getting knocked out because I was looking at a girl was very cool. It's amazing how it kind of came and went, and we got to hang out with the band. My wife Grannya was there. She's actually in the video for a brief second too, and I got to meet a lot of cool people through that experience. Fisher Stevens, he was the director, and Bon Jovi and the whole John Bon Jovi and the whole band were there too. They even let me sit and eat lunch and dinner with them. I wasn't sitting with the rest of the cast and the crew. They were very, very nice, and I met a lot of very cool, interesting people, and it's always good to see what goes on behind the scenes and all when you're putting these stories together, and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, So there was actually 4 different videos made for it. So there was the one story, and he cut it up into different chapters. So unfortunately, it wasn't as successful a song as most of Bon Jovi's, but at least I got on there somewhere.
Well, I'm confident it had nothing to do with you. But that must have been an interesting experience, going from being an athlete to being on the screen pretending to box.
Yeah, there's an art there in itself. So there is like choreographed fight scenes and things, and there's little tweaks and stuff. Whenever you're actually physically doing it, it feels and looks preposterous. But then when you get to see it on camera, it's like, it all makes sense, So it's got its own technique and rhythm to it as well. But no, it was very enjoyable. And whenever you've got a good dance partner, which is the guy along with you that isn't, don't be hitting me, don't be doing that. No, it's like, no, we're acting. It's not a real fight. It's not going to be real. I'm not going to touch you. And if you do touch me by accident, I'm not going to touch you back. So don't worry about it. I had the same experience on Hands of Stone when I was working with Edgar Ramirez. I was playing Ken Buchanan. He was playing Roberto Duran. And the first thing was said to me was, you can't hit him. And I'm like, what? They're like, don't hit him, please don't hit him. He's our lead guy. We can't, God forbid I break his nose or something. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I know my job. I'm here as an actor. I'm acting. I don't feel like I'm still a fighter. Don't worry about it. And it went great.
Scared.
Go with that. And Edgar was a pleasure to work with, and we had a lot of fun letting on to beat each other up in the ring.
Well, you had trained. I mean, you wound up playing, as you said, Ken Buchanan in Hands of Stone. But you had actually met Robert De Niro before that. Didn't you train him for a boxing movie?
Yeah, I ended up working with him for about 6 weeks before he went. They shoot Grudge Match with Sylvester Stallone. So he did, and that was a great experience. Just seeing how his whole demeanor and his speech and everything, the way that he changed, the closer he got to his shoot dates, and that was all in Manhattan. And then whenever they were ready for him, away he went. I think it was in New Orleans or somewhere where they were filming. But that was a great experience. Now he's a very, very nice man.
Was he a pretty good boxer? I know he trained for Raging Bull. I heard like he was one of the top 10 boxers in the world, they were saying. But
they say that about all actors, They're all great fighters. I can tell you now, no, because once they get hit, it's completely different. But we're all great. We're all great at throwing them. We can all greatly look like it. And he had skills. I mean, he brought up to me about Hands of Stone, and I'm sitting thinking, going, Raging Bull, and I'm like going, that's wow. I was 6 when that came out, and I didn't want to bring it up. So, but no, he could put the combinations together, and he told me a great story about how Jake LaMotta loved him because he had a good left hook, just like Jake LaMotta, and he could throw a nice crisp punch left hook. So he did. So no, it was just very, very enjoyable.
My father-in-law met Jake LaMotta down in Spring Lake, New Jersey in the 80s. Said he was a real nice guy.
Do you know, I was out for a meal with him, with another acting friend of mine, Hope McCallany. It was Hope McCallany's mother's 91st birthday, and Holt wanted to have someone from around that area. She was Julie Wilson was her name. She was a very well-known cabaret singer in around New York in the 50s and 60s. And so Holt wanted to have someone from that time and era, and we were sitting at dinner along with Jake LaMotta, and his wife was there, and we were doing the introductions, and I reached over, how you doing? I'm John, nice to meet you, and I give her a little kiss in the cheek. It's like, and straight away puts the hand up and separates me and goes, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And he was looking me straight in the eye, and he's like 80 something at the time, 86, and I'm looking at him, and he lifts his hand up to me and he says, "Hey, Irish, I can still throw a good left hook, And I was like, and everyone starts laughing, and I'm like, he's not joking, he's completely serious. So I says, "I'm very sorry, Mr. LaMotta. Sorry about that there." And I sat down, and then he said, "Oh, and who's this?" I says, "It's my wife, Grannya." And Grannya leans over, and he said, "Hello, Grannya." And he's kissing her, giving her a kiss in the cheek and a hug. He was a very interesting character, very, very nice man. So he was, but
interesting.
It was an honor to meet such a legend, and they have as many fights as he did, and still they lived to that age and have all his faculties about him and sense. He wasn't punch drunk, and he took a lot of punishment in his fights, and he was still physically and mentally sharp,
Interestingly enough, the first time that I went to see John, I'm not a sports person, so I didn't follow John's career, but I was living in New York, and obviously you couldn't be Irish and living in New York when John was at the top of his game, fighting Madison Square Garden 9 times, not to be excited by what was happening. So I went to the one and only boxing fight I've ever seen, and it was a fight at the Beacon
Theater.
Oh yeah,
Beacon Theater. And I'd finally gone. I was like, let me just see who this guy is. What is all this buzz about? And at that fight, I walked into the lobby afterwards, and Jake LaMotta was there with a big cowboy hat on him. And I actually got to meet John Duddy and Jake LaMotta in the same the same night, which was and then we didn't. It wasn't like we were in touch, and I showed up at an event at the Irish Consul shortly after that. You had just retired from fighting, John, and John came through the door, and we just somehow wound up chatting, and we've been chatting since.
Well, thank goodness, because creatively, it certainly worked out. Before we get to the movie, I just would like to talk to you, Colin, for a minute. Your first book, I think, it's an amazing read for anyone who hasn't picked it up yet, and it's an autobiography, really. And I want to say that you just it's a warts and all story. I mean, what was that like to have to? I mean, you don't hold anything back. You definitely tell your experience in the early part of your life. What was that like to put that on paper?
Well, I got sober in 2006. So 2006, mid 2006, I was 39 years old. I was in Times Square begging for dollar bills for vodka and Coke. And I was living in Hell's Kitchen. I weighed 115 pounds, and I'd basically, pushed anybody that cared about me out of my life. I didn't have a job. I didn't have money. And I was taken to an apartment, a farmhouse upstate to dry out at that time, up to my buddy Tony Caffrey's house. They took me up to try and save my life, basically. And as I was sweating and going through the DTs and sobering, I grabbed a notebook and started writing. And I basically felt like I'm going to write myself out of this mess and write myself back into my life. And that became my first book, Orangutan, which was an account of 20 years of living in New York as a construction worker, trying to become a writer, but really crashing and burning in every aspect of my life until that point. And then Random House bought the book and published it nationally or internationally, and that sort of changed my life. And as I stayed sober and get into therapy and then get into my past about growing up in Northern Ireland, Random House also bought my second memoir, That's That. And you asked me what was the experience like. The experience was horrible.
Living it, certainly. I mean, the living it was actually a lot less painful because I had alcohol and drugs to numb the pain. I had medication, but as I was writing the books, I had removed all self-medication, so I actually had to deal with the discomfort and the pain and the trauma that I was running from my whole life, which was my childhood, basically. Sure. I mean, it's poignant. I mean, it's definitely worth the read. So worth the read. I thought to myself, gee, that couldn't have been easy to put on paper. Just to not only to revisit it the way you did, but just to make an admission. I mean, everybody wants to somewhat sugarcoat, I guess, their own story, but you don't do that. You don't sugarcoat it at all.
No, it was ugly. Actually, when I did the first readings, I had people say to me, it's got to be an exaggeration. I said, I've actually toned it down.
Yeah.
Nobody would believe how ugly and crazy it really was. But I feel like that's alcoholism and mental illness. And I didn't want to sugarcoat it because I'd had such a first-hand experience of it and felt so grateful to be alive that I sort of wanted to start my journey by saying, I just have been through this, and you can get sober, you can get healthy, you can get help with mental health. And I wanted to make, that's been a big part of my own journey for the last 14 years being sober. I've never tried to hide behind a sugar-coated version of my past because I feel like it's important for me to say, hey, I was a drunk and a drug addict, but I'm also a dad and a husband now and a filmmaker and an author and all these other things that have been possible because I get sober.
Sure. I wanted to ask you about your follow-up book. That's That, Colin.
Yeah, that was the most difficult book for me to write. That's the book that really healed me because Orangutan I had written, and it was like, I'm just sort of throwing it up. It's like, here I am it was like I'm grabbing the ring. I'm like, okay, I got to live. So let me try and write. And I started writing about my time in New York. After that book came out, and got a lot of great press, my agent said to me, "You must write a book about your childhood." And I didn't want to write a book about my childhood. I was still trying to run away from it. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. Subconsciously, I just didn't want to go there.
You have to be careful too within, I think, your religion and your parents and siblings and family who are still alive, and how much you put that out there. I mean, you could smear and blacken certain people in the family, and Thanksgiving might not be so fun this year.
It was a process. Those were all very up in Northern Ireland. First of all, so much secrecy in that community and society to actually open a door and say, "Hey, here's what really happened in my home and in my community."
That's right.
Was very, very tricky, and it was a lot for me to overcome, because it was also the first time I was really understanding. So my God, I grew up during a war, and I lost friends, and I've been traumatized. I'd sort of admitted that out loud. And then I had to go to the family before the book was published and say, "This is what's going to be in the book. And I need you guys to sort of know that before it comes out, so you're not like blindsided." And it was difficult. It was a difficult process. The moment that book was published, I had, there was a full page article in the Sunday World in Northern Ireland. And it was under the title, "The Truth Is, It's a Bunch of Lies." And they had local people saying, "He's making this up. There was no trouble around here."
Wow. That was the next question I was going to ask you about the blowback, and how much fallout did you experience? And
quite a bit
talking about that.
Quite a bit at the beginning. It was hard for the family. It was hard for the community. And people, we were, coming out of Northern Ireland, which was so much of the society at the time was based on secrecy and protecting, and to sort of come out with a memoir was sort of to betray the community, to betray the silence, the code of silence.
Here we go now, the betrayal. I knew that was I didn't want to say it, but yeah, that word is
totally
associated with filth and backstabber, and
and I didn't. It's not like I have any information in the book that would get anybody jailed or in trouble that way. But I did come out and tell a very honest, raw version of what it was like growing up. And what's happened over time is it has helped the conversation, and it has helped other people be more honest. And it has been very healing in many ways. The book is actually, I think, sells better now than it did when it first came out. And it's still, it's still doing its thing. So, I'm proud of it, and I can sleep at night.
We're proud of you.
And my family are proud of it. My family are proud of it. And
you transitioned into screenwriting then. I think your first work, and you can correct me, I could be wrong, was Emerald City. And
I made a short movie called Smile.
Okay.
Which is on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's about a 10-minute movie. And it was I didn't know anything about filmmaking, so I started making a short movie. And that sort of was my introduction into filmmaking. And that's a very personal sort of, it's a movie about transformation. It's a basically a personal poetry, a poem of transformation. And then when I saw that I could do it, I figured I can make a feature. If I can do this for 10 minutes, I can do a feature movie, which was, terribly arrogant.
But you wound up doing it, right? At Emerald City, and that was the first time you worked with John.
Well, John and I had worked on John was in my play Father Who. After we met at the Irish consulate, I had a play that performed, which was called Father Who. We did it at Theatre 80 downtown. It was a great success, and we had a lot of fun. Then he was in another play I wrote called Spud Munchers, which we had a run in Woodlawn with that play. Also a lot of fun. And then I figured we better do a movie, and then we did Emerald City together, and that was the first feature movie. And you were talking about, John, not actually wanting to punch actors. I was the guy, the director, who was most at risk of getting punched.
Well, I mean, I know now you're working on, or you released, and there's big news too about it getting a global distribution deal, but the movie A Bend in the River, and it's gotten such media attention. John, what's that like to see the movie start to really take off?
It's great to see it do anything after the year that we've had with COVID.
Sure.
I always find with Colin that no matter what we do, whether it's a play or a movie, there's always obstacles that he seems to find a way to overcome, and then there's always unforeseen obstacles that we sit by their time and finally overcome. We all come together, and I think that now that the fact that I think I'm like a horse at the beginning of a race, and I'm just waiting for the starting gates to open, because it's been getting little glimpses, and people, the feedback we're getting is very similar to like the feedback that we got from Emerald City. It's like, wow, this is not what we were expecting. It's like people be shocked. I don't know, they go in with not so much expectations of it all, and then they're completely blown away. And I think that's got to do with Colin's writing and his journey, and that's one of the things that I find so attractive about on how I think me and Colin effortlessly kind of came into being good friends, is that his journey, and don't get me wrong, I'm nothing like that orangutan, but in my own journey with the fighting and the training and leaving home and the immigrant experience, and then and I love that stat too, because reading that reminded me of looking back and little things I did as a kid. And I'm like, wow, yeah, this is right. Wow, he's gone through the same experiences that we're kind of going. And then, as I say, Emerald City was a blast, but they returned back home and live in Tyrone for 5 weeks, shooting A Bend in a River, which is basically about a guy coming home, finding home. And I think back when we were making that, I realized that, oh my God, this isn't my home anymore. I live somewhere else. Wow. And because you have all these ideas in your head of, has home changed? No. Or people look at you differently, or no, you change a lot as well. And you don't sort of realize it until you go back, but you're always kind of putting it on everything else changing. And in reality, it hasn't changed that much. They're still in the same schedule. They're living the same thing. Your life's just a little different from theirs, and the journey for me, it's just all of a sudden becoming more aware of certain things in my life, whereas I wouldn't have been open to be aware to, because when I was boxing, it's the blinkers are on, the goal, the prize is that's the prize. And I simplified my life so much is that when I got the call to fight, people used to say, they're like, Granya, where's John? And she's like, oh, he's in training. What do you mean? So where is he? Well, at the beginning, I would have been in the apartment just, sure, is he not going to come? No, he's happy enough reading books, watching TV. And then I'd have been away in training camp. And then after the fight, you'd have seen me for a few weeks. And then I got a call again, boom, and I was away again, So being able to look back on that and sort of take a wider view at actually what I was doing and what I was experiencing, I kind of used to always block all that stuff out. And I was never aware of me doing that until getting into acting, where all of a sudden there's this world of being aware and feeling and not being afraid to show your emotions and stuff. And then they meet someone like Colin, whose honesty is like, they always say, where people wear their heart in their sleeve. Colin's heart is him as a whole. And they talk about the bruises and the cuts and the scrapes and the ugly side that I think we all have in common. We all have that little side of us that isn't nice, that if you were to meet them, you'd be like, I wouldn't like that guy. But sometimes you fall into that kind of person. But when you start becoming more aware of it, you start realizing that, yeah, you know what? you're not alone. We're all in this little struggle to get through, and then they find someone else, which is a creator, and to be a part of that. For me personally, they go from a profession where my job was to take people apart, destroy, and move forward. They all of a sudden now to be somewhere where it's like everything's open, the smells, the sights, the sounds, and you can take people along with you on that journey. And at the end of it, you can sit in the cinema and hear their reaction, and hopefully it's an applause, because that's just as terrifying as when you're walking into Madison Square Garden.
Well, Colin, John was playing a young version of you in the movie, correct? Isn't the movie loosely based on your experience as well?
So he's actually playing a version of me. It is very autobiographical, but I've tried to sort of make it, it's about an Irish writer who's returning home to Northern Ireland after not being there for 26 years. So he's returning for the first time to sort of face the ghosts of his past. He has writer's block, basically, and his agent says, you got to go home. And what are you running from? So he arrives in Ireland at the beginning, and it's sort of like he has to sort of come to terms with the ghosts of his past and who he is, and what his place in that community is, and maybe it brings up it probably presents all these issues more than it answers all the questions. It's a meditation on exile, on immigration, on returning home, on what home is. I like to think of it as a sort of poem of returning, because we're from Northern Ireland, the message is actually very universal. It's about immigration anywhere, really. The feelings are the same. It's universal, whether it's Australia or Mexico or Ireland. You're returning home after 26 years, and you deal with the same issues. So the movie sort of deals with all of that.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break for a commercial, and when we get back, I kind of want to talk to John about the burden of playing a young you, how that felt, if he felt any particular responsibility.
That's what I was going to say when we come back. Give us 1 second, everybody out there in the studio audience worldwide. We will be right back.
Yeah, I was just wondering for John, did you feel any particular responsibility to get that character right, knowing it somewhat was a version of Colin?
Yeah, of course. I think Colin and I were basically joined at the hip through all the filming. I mean, it was a fantastic experience, and I wouldn't want to go. I wouldn't be saying like I'm walking. I think if I was thinking, oh my God, I'm playing home, I would probably have intimidated myself a lot much. But what I took from it was that there was a lot of experiences with returning back home that I'm like going, I've been here before myself. I'm like, wow, and then you can add in the ingredients of the story along with it, then just they take it on further. But as I say, it was like I was walking with the shadow with me through every door, even meeting people that were there in Tyrone who were so helpful and so thankful. I mean, the Kelly's Hotel, they just seemed to open their arms to us, and we're like, at the fun, it was like, oh, here come the Yanks. The Yanks are making a movie,
Mm-hmm.
Two local guys, and even though I was from Derry City, which isn't that far up the road, when you grew up at home, there would be like Tyrone Derry. When I came, there was none. It was like, no, he's one of ours, he's there helping Broderick put a movie together. Whatever they need, let's give him a hand, So I hope I did a good job. I felt really comfortable and what we were doing. Like Colin was kind enough to his family. We got a house, a little cottage up off Altamuskin Road, and there was no TV. There was an open fire, and there was a cooker where I could put on my cup of tea. So at night, me and Johnny McConnell, who plays the priest, who plays my older brother in the movie, Colin used to drop us back there at night, and we'd have the fire blazing, the teapot on, and I'd be fiddling with a guitar, or we'd be going over our scenes for the next day, and just having that sort of aloneness together in the middle of Ireland. You know, like, you had opened the door and it was pitch black, so it was all you could have was the stars at night and the moon shining. Like, was your lightway. It was just gorgeous, and even the smell of the manure in the next fields and stuff like that. That they hear the sheep ban and stuff. There was just something very. I just wanted to absorb it all, and then just, as I say, let it hopefully come out through and on the screen.
John, I have a question for you. Generally with acting, what do you prefer? You prefer the theater, or do you prefer doing movies?
I just prefer working. So whether it's on a stage or whether it's in front of a camera, I have had some great experiences. How I got into acting actually was with a friend of Tony, a mutual friend of ours, Seamus McDonough, and Colin knows Seamus as well. And when I retired back in 2001 or 2011, sorry, Seamus.
Now wait a minute, we didn't know you knew Seamus.
No, yeah, Seamus talked about him during the podcast.
Seamus talked about me on his interview. Yes, because I watched that as well.
He did. He mentioned him.
And Seamus was the one that reached out to me because he was acting before as well, and I was always interested in it. But when you look back on and you read about certain fighters and people in their careers, whenever it went wrong is whenever they got distracted and started thinking of something else. So I was adamant to see how far the boxing I could go with, and then maybe I'll get to that later. And so once I retired, Seamus called me to make sure that I was okay, because there was all these rumors too that maybe I had a brain injury or something like that, which is still out there to question, But I said to Seamus, no, everything's great. He says, well, I'm doing a play. Are you still interested in acting? And I'm like, I would love it. And he goes, well, we're doing this show. It's about an Irish American. He's a fighter. He's considering retirement, and he's an alcoholic. And I was like, where do you sign up? Just let's do it. And that really sort of broke me on to the whole idea of getting on a stage. And then within that time, I met Colin as well. And like the first show I did with Colin was Spud Munchers, which I think today, if it was the same circumstances, I wouldn't have the gall to actually try and get on a stage, because we only had like a 3-week rehearsal, if even. Colin, wow. Do you remember whenever we went on? And it wasn't until the last show that we actually got the show correct.
Spud Munchers was hilarious.
But it was so much fun. And everyone that came to see it, that's what I loved about it. I was like, the fact that it was just so much fun to go out there and take these people on a little journey for, well, it was an hour or an hour. I think it was an hour the first time we went out. It was about an hour and 20 minutes when we finally got the show right, between forgetting lines and things like that, But
people just walking out there doors that they weren't supposed to go out.
But just to be out there, we know sifting it and taking these people, and then once you get the people, once you know you have them and they're on that journey with you, like there's a very similar feel that you have that whenever you're in a ring fighting, and you're aware of that. When you've got that audience behind you, when you've got the guy in the back footing. It's there's the same conflict on a stage, and that I don't know, that's very exciting and very beautiful. But as I say, as you get older, if I know and then what I know now, I wouldn't have had the courage to get on to do it, But I think if Colin asked me to do anything, I think I would probably say yes, no problem,
Well, anything Colin does would be really hard to say no to.
Wife, Grannya. Stop it.
The wife is there. Hey.
Hi, Grannya.
Wait a minute. Bring the wife on.
They says bring the wife on.
The uh-oh alarm went off.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. John speaks so much about you and so well of you.
I'll pay him his $50 later for that.
Grannya is also in the movie, by the way. She was in Emerald City and in A Bend in the River.
Oh, really?
Hmm?
I guess
family affair.
She was also in my play Father Who,
which we really loved.
Well, I mean, anything Colin does, I didn't see the play, obviously, but read the book, and want to see the movie. I've seen clips of the movie, but I want to see it in its entirety. But anything you seem to be connected to, Colin, really turns out well. You have a very good creative sense, and filmmaking seems to be your niche.
Thank you, Tony. Just on on a note, I know a lot of people are curious when they can see the movie and how they can see the movie. We've had a lot of setbacks because of COVID. We had sold out the Belfast premiere twice, and then they called it off. That was at the beginning of COVID. And, here we are now, basically, we were coming out and we were planning a big New York City premiere. And, I'll announce it here. We've just in the last week decided that that's not going to happen. And we are actually the movie is screening in Chicago at the end of September. That'll be its big screen debut in America. And then we're going to have a release online. It'll be VOD, which is what all movies are now. There really aren't any movie premieres happening in the United States because it seems like an irresponsible sort of thing to do at the moment. And so it'll be a VOD, but hopefully by the end of September, we'll probably announce a date within the next week or two, but by the end of September, the movie should be available to watch in the United States, in Ireland, England, UK, wherever, online.
Article, and I don't know. I guess you can tell me if that's what's still happening. But it seemed as if you were getting a worldwide distribution deal.
We do
have that still.
Yes. And the movie just screened at the Cannes market over there and got some great buzz just a couple of weeks ago. So as I say, we are just gathering all the information, and we'll have information on the release date. We have to talk to the distributor about what date they decide to actually let the movie go. So hopefully by the end of September.
And where can people go to get information about the movie?
You should just go to my website. As soon as I have the information, I'll post it on there, www.colinbroderick.com. And, you'll have information there about the movie, about Emerald City, and about upcoming projects and books that I have.
That's wonderful. I hope you guys will come back when a little bit further down the road when the movie's already up and kicking, once we get a chance to watch it, because I know I'll have questions once I see it.
Wonderful. Looking forward. I'm really excited for people to see it. I'm really, really proud of the movie that we've done. It's not like any other movie that I've seen, and it's really profound and special what John has brought to the movie. This is his first role as a leading man in a movie, and he is, every bit as worthy as Liam Neeson or Colin Farrell or any of our Irish leading men, and I would argue a more handsome.
I mean, I believe it because John is a phenomenal actor. He brings 150% to anything he does. It's really amazing to watch him. He's got such focus. He wants to get it right. He works at getting it perfect. So I can't wait to see it. I imagine it's going to be an enjoyable ride.
He's amazing in this movie. He really is amazing.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Fortunately, we're out of time now, but I do hope that both of you will come back again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thank you.
Give us an update when you guys come back.
Thank you.
Maybe we can run a little authorized clip or something.
Absolutely.
That'd be nice, a trailer or anything.
Absolutely make that happen. There is a trailer online. If you just Google, go on YouTube and look for a Bend in the River movie trailer. There's a teaser trailer online at the moment, so that's available. You could link that to this interview if you like.
Sure, I think that's what I watched actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it generates quite a buzz. I mean, just watching it, I could see the quality of it. So I am looking forward to it. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. It was an honor to talk to both of you. John, it's always great to see you.
Great to see you too, Tony.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you so much for the invite, and a pleasure to meet you too, man. Thank you so much. And as I say, I watched your last few podcasts, and I really loved the Seamus
good.
McDonough one as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I just love Seamus as a human being.
He's a
just
great
so,
guy.
like
Not-
Colin, open and honest, you know, and they be someone that came from the same background as mine, where you used to hurt people for a living. You see him so open and smiling and happy and just spreading joy, you know.
I couldn't agree with you more, John. I love Seamus.
Yeah.
One of my
He
favorite
loves,
people.
he loves laughing.
Irish guests
and-
are the best.
Is that what it is? It's
It
just
is.
That's what it is. I'm glad I'm part Irish.
Yeah.
Although he
Never
did
know.
say I had the worst Irish accent he ever heard.
You did say that.
Well, next
great
time,
truth.
so when I seen that, by the way, the next time you're going to have to get a lot better hair designers, because Seamus was terribly worried about his hair.
Oh my gosh,
if I'm not wrong.
he was so funny in that episode.
He is hilarious. He's such a great guy.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you, John.
Have a great week.